Michigan State escapes Florida Atlantic, winning 16-10. They were up 16-0 at one point, and it looked like they could pull away and make it ugly, but they didn't. They let Florida Atlantic hang around, or maybe from a different angle, Florida Atlantic forced Michigan State to hang around in the bar, and it got ugly, and there were beer bottles and cans flying everywhere. There were scrapes, there were punches thrown, and it got ugly. It did. A 16-10 game between a Power 4 school and a Group of 5 school, especially when the Power 4 school's at home, is an ugly game. And it's not like Michigan State was totally incapable of moving the football, even though they did struggle mightily on offense. They had 3 turnovers. One of those turnovers was an interception thrown basically at the goal line that Florida Atlantic nearly returned for 6. They returned it for about 50, 60 yards, and then on a 40-yard, 3-minute drive and 7 plays, on a 4th and 1 nonetheless, they got a touchdown pass. And instead of Michigan State being ahead 23-3, they were only ahead 16-10, and they had to survive the whole 4th quarter with Joe Rossi's defense unexpectedly carrying Jonathan Smith and Brian Lindgren's offense. This was look, I'm not going to call it a disaster, because Michigan State last year was a disaster, and you knew that it was going to be a rebuild, even this year. But I thought Michigan State would come out and at least, with Florida Atlantic, bless me, mop the floor with them. They didn't. My score prediction was 45-10. I got the 10 part right for Florida Atlantic, but I was off by about 29 points on the Michigan State part, which actually makes, in my mind, Michigan State's defensive performance that much more impressive. I mean, they were able to hold Florida Atlantic to 2 of 5 on 4th down, 2 of 15 on 3rd down, 19 first downs, only 132 rushing yards and 116 passing yards. They forced turnovers from Florida Atlantic, along with getting sacks, pressure. Scotty Hazelton, as I said on Twitter, he should be in a holding cell. He should have a show cause so that no team in college football can hire him again. And Steve Sarkisian should fire him as an analyst right now. I have no clue why he's on staff. He horrifically mismanaged the talent that was on that defense. And while Michigan State received a plethora of transfers, you had players like Chris Bogle, like Angelo Gross, like Cal Halliday, like Alex Van Sumeren, and others like Malik Spencer, Ken Talley, that he had on his defense at one point, or even recruited and developed, and they did well. In one game in year 1 with defensive coordinator Joe Rossi, who I defended even when he had a bad year last season at Minnesota. Michigan State's problem is not the defense. It's not the special teams. I wouldn't even say it's the offense in terms of coaching and scheme. What it is the fact that Michigan State has a lot of newness on the offensive line. That's why Florida Atlantic was able to get a sack and 5 TFLs and hold Michigan State to, if you factor out the 63-yard rush, get 116 total yards that the Spartans did have on the Owls for, 36 carries? Yeah, 36 carries. FAU held Michigan State to about 3.2 yards per pop outside of that run, which is not terrible, again, given the newness and inexperience on the offensive line, but it's not great either. And Childs is new. The receivers, I said in the preseason, and I'm not always right when it comes to the preseason. Like, I'm wrong on some things. But I think I was correct when I said that the receivers were not the strong point of this team. Monterey Foster Jr., Alante Brown, Nick Marsh, Jack Velling, who's at tight end. Those are some good players. But especially with the wide receivers, there was a lot of miscommunication that I don't think was Child's fault. These receivers are young, they're inexperienced, their ceilings are not necessarily high, I would say again, outside of Nick Marsh. And Florida Atlantic did a better job of stopping the pass than they did the run. And really, the problem on offense for MSU is the scheme. This is a complex, I would say pro style, maybe pro spread, not exactly my expertise in terms of diagnosing schemes, but this is not a one read simplified spread. That's not what this is. This is a complex offense where they'll line up in the I form. They will use a player as a fullback. They will draw up complex plays and attack you deep or short or medium or run the quarterback or run up the middle, run on the outside, in between. They'll do whatever they can to win. And Jonathan Smith is a good coach. He's also an offensive mastermind along with Brian Lindgren. The scheme will take time to implement. And I think you'll see Michigan State's offense get better as the year goes on. The tough thing, of course, is Maryland is up next, and that's a road game, and Maryland looked very impressive, especially with Billy Edwards in their offense, which I thought would take a step back against UConn. Again, it's UConn, and UConn was not good last year or the year before under Jim Mora, but we'll have to see. Right now, Michigan State is an underdog in that game. The defense for Florida Atlantic played okay. Again, a sack, 5 TFLs, and only reason I didn't put they played well or they played good is I don't know who Michigan State's offense is or what they are. They could be, as I've said, a team that has some potential on that side of the ball, but it'll just take time for the scheme to work itself in, or they could be genuinely this bad. So I don't exactly know, and I'm just going to leave that up to you and my own thoughts to determine that right now. We don't have a lot of evidence for that, especially with, look, the over 60 new players on this roster. We don't have that right now. But I can tell you that them having 2 interceptions, especially one at the goal line, them having a fumble recovery by Jaden Williams, and them getting a few TFLs, a pass defended, and a sack on the road is a solid performance in my mind by the defense, and holding Michigan State to under 5 yards per pass attempt, and without that K'Ron Lynch-Adams 63-yard run under 4 yards per run attempt is pretty admirable and pretty impressive. But that's about where the talk about Florida Atlantic stops, because their quarterback Cam Fancher was atrocious, had a 9.4 passer rating. He literally was Deacon Hill with legs. That's what Cam Fancher was. And also this annoyingly long, awkward slide ritual that he would do whenever he tried to get down. Michigan State, as I said earlier, has a lot to improve on. The defense I thought was great. I do think it is going to be a legitimate unit in Big Ten play, and I think you'll see that. Could it be as good as Tony White's defense was last year at Nebraska, where White comes in to a busted defense that was awful the year prior and immediately turns it into a top 25, top 20 unit? We'll have to see. I certainly think that Rossi's capable of that, and I would say this defense is definitely top 50 right now. And again, it's Florida Atlantic, but I don't think that's much of an overreaction, given that the offense was bad, constantly put the defense in bad positions, in bad spots, poor field position, and the defense still clutched up and did their job. But the offense, I'm just telling you, 3 turnovers, not even 300 yards. Aiden Childs did not look good. 2 picks, no touchdowns, only a 30.7 QBR, constantly overthrowing guys. Miscommunications galore. We'll just have to see, really. I hope that he improves. I hope that he gets better, and this is coming from a Michigan fan. But that was a rough opening for an offense that I thought was going to have one of its easier challenges of the 2024 season, because Michigan State, they have Oregon, they have Michigan, they have Ohio State, they have Iowa, they even have Rutgers, and Maryland on the road in week 2. That looks like a challenge right now. So there's a lot to improve on, but there are bright spots to look at. Like K'Ron Lynch-Adams had 9 carries for 101 yards, and that means you even take out a 63-yard run, it's about 38 carries or 38 yards on 8 carries. That's not too bad either. That's a little over 4 yards per pop. He was more consistent than Nate Carter, who got the bulk of the carries at 19, but only had 48 yards and averaged 2.5 yards per carry. He had a little bit of a rough night on Friday. Childs had 28 rushing yards and a very impressive 14-yard rushing touchdown where he looked really good and elusive. And the defense had 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, a pass defended, and 2 interceptions. They were covering pretty good. Again, it is Florida Atlantic, and Cam Fancher's not a good QB, but Michigan State was covering well, in my mind. And for that, I think that's great news, because defense has not been Michigan State's strong suit ever since 2019. And some would say 2018, because that 2019 defense was a big step off from that elite national title caliber 2018 defense that Mark D'Antonio and Mike Tressel fielded. The MVP for this game on Michigan State's side of the ball is defensive end Chris Bogle. Bogle had 5 total tackles, 1.5 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss. He was impressive, and it was huge that he returned, and you can see why that is now. Jordan Turner also had a sack, same with incoming transfer Daquan Deuce. Turner was also an incoming transfer. Ed Woods, incoming transfer, had a sack. And Ken Talley was a transfer that I think Michigan State and Mel Tucker took in before the 2022 season, like right in that August-September window. He couldn't play in 2022, but they took him from Penn State. He looked good in the limited amount of time that he got. This defense, I'm telling you, especially the defensive line who lost Simeon Barrow and Derek Harmon, they're good. And if Michigan State was somehow able to keep Derek Harmon and Simeon Barrow, who knows how good this defensive line and overall defensive front with linebackers Jordan Turner, Cal Halliday, Jordan Hall, who knows how good they could be. I mean, this defense, as I've said for years, has talent. Scotty Hazelton just horrifically mismanaged it. Now you have Joe Rossi, who has worked at Minnesota with talent that resides outside of the top 50 in terms of average roster talent. And now he comes to Michigan State, who has top 40, maybe top 30 roster talent. And he can do stuff because he knows how to work with limited talent. And he knows how to develop and scheme well. And really, that's that. I think Michigan State is a good team defensively. Offensively, you still see the errors and the poor recruiting and development that Jay Johnson and the Mel Tucker regime gave Jonathan Smith. You also see how complex his offense is and that it's taking time to work things in. But I think they'll improve everywhere and be a better team still compared to last season. You may not see it in record. I want to caution you. They could be 4-8 again, but they'll be a better 4-8 team than they were last year, and there will be hope entering 2025 and beyond. Thank you for watching this cut of Touchdown Talk. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video around to other college football fans. I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members for sponsoring this channel and video. Thanks to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being Heisman members. Thanks to Chris Lane, Connor Little OH, Ismart, and Tyler Nye for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being all conference members. If you want direct message access to me, and also after 6 months of membership, free signed College Football with Sam merchandise delivered to your door, merchandise of your choosing, I may add. Sign up as a Heisman member for $25 a month and stick around for 6 months. All American membership is $10. All conference membership is $5. If you want merchandise regardless, check out my merchandise store via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. It's high quality stuff. I wear it for all of my streams, and that's because it's comfortable, high quality, athletic, stretchy. It's really good clothing, and I encourage you to check out my merchandise store along with my Patreon page, which are in the links in the description and in the pinned comment. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.